Welcome to Business Insight. Our topic today is managing career transitions. My guest is Candida Brush. She's professor of entrepreneurship and director of the entrepreneurship division at Babson College. Candy, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
What's making career transitions such a challenge these days?
Well, lots of things, actually. I think, first of all, we know what happened in the economy last fall with financial crisis and so forth. But the nature of careers has changed. It used to be that you would work for one company for a number of years. And now the reality is that most people will have 10 different jobs during their lifetime. And that means that you're going to be changing careers, changing industries, and you may even have time off from your work where you would be not working at all. And so that means that you're going to be in transition at least 10 times.
And how do you define your career in that case?
Yes, okay. And I think historically we thought of a career as moving up the ladder. You work for a company, you build your skill set, you get rewarded, you get a new title and a new raise, and you have job security. But that's really not the case anymore. The new career is more lateral, where it's boundaryless, and you collect a portfolio of experiences that hopefully are transferable across a multitude of jobs. So you have to think of your career as a developmental experience.
Now, you're at Babson in the middle of entrepreneur headquarters. How much is there still, when you look across the country? I would guess that there's an awful lot of people that either haven't jumped on to what this is or can't or won't or whatever. In other words, how about the people that not necessarily are caught behind, but maybe they are, or maybe they're just in the old mode?
Yes, and it's interesting. I was at a career event last night for our undergraduate students, and I took a poll of the audience. I said, how many of you are looking for a job? How many of you know what you want to be? And the fact is, most people sort of fall into that traditional mode. You think, I'm going to get a job being a financial analyst, or I'm going to be a salesperson. And it's really not about being something or having a particular job. You have to really apply an entrepreneurial approach, which is, what are those experiences, what are those opportunities that I might seek? And in many cases, you end up having to shape your career. It could be through taking an internship and kind of working your way through if you happen to be an undergraduate, but working your way and shaping that experience into something that you can demonstrate your value. On the other hand, even our MBAs are taking internships and getting different kinds of experiences that will lead to a next step. So you really have to think about it differently. You can't think about getting that single job or becoming something. Most of us don't know what we want to be. I didn't know what I wanted to be until I was 37, so you have a lot of time if you're under 37.
Some of us are still trying to figure it out.
I know, me too.
In this context, how does one or how should one define success?
Very good question. I think historically we've defined success with sort of tangible kinds of things like money or a title or some of those kinds of things. And as we now know, those things are a little more transient. So I think it's very important to think about what you want to accomplish. You want to think about the legacy that you want to leave, or the accomplishments or achievement that you may want to have, happiness, and of course relationships. Those are the four things that Stevenson and Nash, there's an article written in Harvard Business Review, they talk about the dimensions of success. And success is defined differently at different phases in your life. I have 3 daughters. They're much younger than I am, of course. And my younger children will think about achievement because they don't have the responsibilities of a house or a family. So achievement's very important to them. But as we get older and more mature, like perhaps you and I, we think about what we want to leave behind and how we want to mentor people. So the dimensions change over your life cycle.
How does technology innovation impact kind of this whole mix? In other words, the whole world is kind of different today, and how does that fit into this whole career management and transition?
Yeah, good point. I think that that technology can facilitate the opportunity to find jobs, because it used to be that we would have social networks that were physical networks, but now we have electronic networks, which allows you to get out there and to meet people in a different way. Oftentimes we'll get email from students who say, I'm applying for a job at Reebok, and I saw on LinkedIn that you have 3 connections at Reebok. Can you connect me to that person? We couldn't do that several years ago, so that becomes a little added advantage. I also heard from a student last night that one of the things that he did, he was interested in getting into the journalism area, and so he went and found different writers that would blog, and he commented on their blogs to establish an electronic relationship. So technology can be an asset to help you get noticed, if you will.
Related to that is our shrinking world. and globalization, outsourcing, how kind of does that fit in with the way one needs to plan or manage their career?
Well, I think, we used to think of international companies as those that exported or imported, but the reality is I think most businesses are global. If you have a website, you're probably being viewed in multiple countries, so you have to consider that whatever you do in terms of looking for jobs and so forth could be out there in an international arena. So if you post your resume on monster.com, somebody in Canada might pick it up. So you have to open up your mind to be flexible for maybe moving to different countries or looking for opportunities in different places. The other piece of it is whatever job you do, chances are it's going to have some sort of international component. You may be working on a virtual team where you won't see the people you work with, but they may be in India and you may have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to have that conference call.
Transition isn't always easy for people. What kind of emotional impacts are there on the up, down, sideways, and so forth that people should expect are going to be happening to them?
Yeah, I think there's an emotional aspect of it when you leave a work situation, even if it's by choice. A lot of times there's this emotional sort of letdown because in some respects, whatever work situation you've left, you have a network, you have a support system. And if you are looking for a new position, you're in the role of trying to find a new network. And so there's emotional ups and downs. You psych yourself up for the interview. You psych yourself up to learn about the company. And then if it doesn't work out, there can be a letdown. And it may not work out by choice or by the company's choice. So there's these peaks and valleys that you go through emotionally.
Any tips for the numerous people who are in a long transition stage that, a lot of people are out of work, it's a tough economic time. What can they do to have staying power in the process of transitions that may be a lot longer than one would have liked in the past?
Well, one thing I always suggest is that volunteer work is a very good way to stay in the workforce or to do internships. But volunteer work is a good way. Like if you volunteer for the Jimmy Fund, for example, there's lots of large companies and small startup businesses that are contributors or supporters. It's a great way to network and meet people that might actually be in the hiring mode. And plus, if you're working with those folks, then they have an opportunity to see what a capable person you are, no matter what your role. So that's one way to kind of keep your mind active and to stay connected to people in the workforce.
How in the process of doing this does one tell their story? What should you be thinking about in order to tell the story of who you are professionally and so forth?
Well, we always talk about, entrepreneurship. You have to have your rocket pitch. And I think in career transition, you have to have a rocket pitch. I'm a person that. Can you complete that sentence? Or I'm looking for a career opportunity that. So what is it that really gives you, that story, that theme that you have? A lot of times when people complete that sentence, they will say, I'm a creative person. Well, that might be great, but maybe sometimes you want to append that rocket pitch with a story about a situation, a task, what you did about it and the approach you took and the results, because if you can contextualize your story after your rocket pitch, it can be more powerful.
I know part of your story is you're a golfer. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I know, not today.
Well, I read your recent article where you kind of talk about Harvey Penick's Little Red Book and some of the tips, and then you analogize that to a lot of the things people go through with transitions for work. First, in a general way, what makes golf relevant to transitions?
Well, golf is a game of transitions, and you're always in transition, even when you swing the club from setup to the backswing to the follow-through. There are transitions just in the swing. There's a lot of uncertainty. You never know, depending on the course, the weather, who you're playing with, or the circumstances. So you have to be flexible in that kind of situation. But at the same time, you have to be focused on where you want to go. You have to have a sense of direction. You have to have a sense of following the rules, a sense of staying focused on the target. So those are some things that really do apply in a career transition as well.
I think it'd be great to just go through some of the points that
Sure.
you make some really interesting analyses. Positive thinking.
Yes. Well, in golf, as anybody who's a golfer knows, that if you let that negative thought get in there, like, what if I miss this putt? That's a sure sign you're going to miss the putt. The same is true in a career transition. If you're doing a job interview and you let those negative thoughts creep in there and saying, I'm not really qualified for this job, it's going to affect how you come across. So being positive is really important.
How about take dead aim?
Take dead aim. That has to do with the focus. Harvey Pinnock always says that you have to focus. And as I mentioned, I play a lot of golf, and one of the golf pros that I worked with I live in Duxbury, and he used to talk about, he said, you have to get engaged with your target, meaning that you have to really focus on it and think about it. And I think the same's true when you're trying to make moves towards a new position or a new job experience, is you really have to get engaged or passionate about where you're headed with it. So taking dead aim applies also.
And any thoughts on how you kind of figure out where that is you're heading?
Yes, well, I always like to have people think about what they care about, because work situations really involve how you're going to spend your time. So you really have to think about how do you want to spend your time? What kind of work environment do you want to be in? Do you want to work every day, 9 to 5? Do you want to be among offices out in the field? So thinking about how you want to spend your time is really important. Same is true with how you pick your golf courses if you want to go there. And you want to play a links course, or you want to play in the woods, you want to play a difficult course, a short course. There's lots of analogies there as well.
He talks about follow-through. I guess it's evident what follow-through means in golf. Presumably he's talking about the swing.
Yes.
What's the analogy in terms of career transitions?
Yes, well, if you're in the interviewing and you're out meeting with lots of people and you meet someone who might be in a company that you might be interested in, if you don't follow up, usually with some sort of personal note, you're not following through. If you say you're going to deliver something, you have to follow through, because following through is what will set you apart from those many people that might be applying for that same position.
Playing in the wind. What's it like playing golf in the wind?
Well, it's a funny phenomenon, and for the golfers out there, you know that your temptation is to swing faster, to do everything faster, because the wind is rushing at you. And if you do things faster, you're not taking your time, you're not paying attention to the details.
Now, why would you, being just a minor golfer, I would have thought I'd swing harder, but not necessarily faster.
I think they're running the same, because you want to wind up a little faster and you want to push it farther.
Oh, okay, swing faster.
Yeah,
okay.
And if the wind is in your face,
Yeah.
you feel that you have to hit it harder, so you will swing faster. And a lot of times if you swing faster, it just isn't going to help you. I know my tendency is that if I rush my backswing, then my follow-through is going to be shorter, whereas if I slow down my backswing, then I'm going to pay attention to the follow-through. And the same is true here in terms of career transitions as well, because you have to be a little bit flexible. You have to make sure that you accommodate for uncertainty. And so when you run up against uncertainty or challenges in your career search, you have to slow it down and pay attention.
And preparing for a big match. Now, what do you do if you're preparing for a big match?
Well, I actually played in the club championship last year, which was quite an honor for me. I had to play several people who were a little younger than I was, so that was a challenge. But the hard thing is to control your nerves, and I think when you go for the big interview or the 5th interview or whatever it might be, the important thing is you have to keep to your routine. Don't do anything special the night before. I think in golf, if you're going to change your routine about what you do before you go to bed, or stay up late, or eat a certain diet or whatever, try to just do as you always do. Keep it the same as you would do for the normal situation. And the same is true with the big interview. You want to kind of keep your routine the same, because if you mess with it too much, it's going to create extra stress.
How much in terms of anticipating an interview, whether researching the company, kind of thinking out questions in advance, do you think that does more good than harm in terms of getting you relaxed at your interview?
Well, I would say it does you more good. In fact, I believe there's a whole science about researching companies, really understanding the company and knowing it as well as the person you're interviewing with, which means not just knowing the job, but it's knowing how it was started, what the history is, how they're performing financially, how they're positioned in the market, what the challenges might be. And of course now with electronic resources, it's much easier to find that information out, through reading annual reports, and again, finding out, who your interviewer knows, because you got LinkedIn, remember.
And learning.
Yeah, it's all about learning. I mean, in golf, You learn about yourself because you learn how you handle fear. You learn how you handle rule situations. You know, golf is a game. You impose your own rules on yourself. If I hit a ball and it's out of bounds, it's up to me to call it out of bounds. It's not up to my partner. And so you learn about yourself. You also learn how other people deal with frustration. It's great to, you know, sort of get to know people on the golf course, because if somebody's in a frustrating situation, do they throw their clubs around, or what do they do? So you're learning. But you're learning in a career situation as well. Every interview is a learning opportunity to learn how you handle certain situations and learn how you're going to, you know, sort of react on your feet. And so you're learning from that experience as much as you're learning about yourself and you're learning about the company.
Can you give any examples of people who you know of who have gone through difficult transitions successfully? So for those people that think they've got it tough, some examples of how other people have handled that kind of thing.
I have two stories. I have one about a student that I know who actually, undergraduate, went to work for a media company, and the media company last year laid everybody off. There were 15 people, it cut 30% of the company, and so there was a gap of 4 to 5 months. And so what that individual did was met with several of the other people that had been laid off, and they met every single day at 10 o'clock at one of the, I can't remember it was like a Starbucks, but it wasn't. And they all searched for jobs together. So there was a social support system for all the unemployed. And then they worked with each other to mock interview each other and do things that would help them be prepared as they went on their job interviews and work through all the friends they had. So that was a younger person. I have another friend who was an older individual that had had a very high-level investment banking job. And when that person was laid off, what that person did was he decided that he would set up meetings and lunches every single day. So every single day he got up, put his suit on, went to work, and had lunch with the people in his network. And after 6 months, he had another job.
How about extreme changes? What are some examples of people that you know that have done transition as something that you wouldn't have thought of before?
I think a lot of the extreme changes, I think what you're talking about is from one industry to another, like going from engineering to nursing or something like that. Usually those transitions involve some sort of schooling or education, because it's very hard to go, and that can be at any age. I know people that are in their 50s decide, I'm done with working in finance, I'm going back to nursing school, which just seems like a really radical kind of thing to do. But the fact is people do it, and I think there's a couple things they have to rely on. I mean, one, you do need a social support system, you know, whoever your family is and whoever could be your children or your mother or your father or your husband or wife, but you need that. And there's also programs that you can go through. I know at Babson we have a transition program for women who are making career transitions from nonprofit to for-profit or not working to working. And there's a lot of other opportunities like that around in the Boston area where you can go through a week of sort of reflection and career skill building. And part of that does give you that support system, so you have some peer accountability for how you would move on to the next level.
How about, I'm a lawyer and I know a lot of people who work for big law firms. They make a lot of money. They may not be happy with what they're doing. What can those kind of people do for a transition?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I know a lot of lawyers too. and of course it may be difficult, but I think you need to sort of put that mindset on and say, all right, what are the things that I really like to do? And if it's you know, reading and preparing cases and those kinds of things, what other opportunities or what other companies would value those kinds of skills? You can practice law not just in a law firm, but there's lots of small companies, big companies that need counsel. Teaching, I mean, there's schools need people that can teach business law, for example. So you can teach outside the law school. You might want to teach in you know, one of the part-time positions at a different school. So you have to think about the kinds of skill set you have and how those would apply in other contexts.
Any extreme examples of a professional, whether they're an investment banker or accountant or whatever, that went like George McGovern opened an inn after he finished with politics? Have you seen any examples where people have really gone tremendously differently?
Not off the top of my head. I can tell you from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor and the research studies that we do at Babson in terms of looking at the age of people who are starting their own businesses. And you may not know this, but the average age of entrepreneurs in the state of Massachusetts is 51.
Wow.
And so, and that, it used to be that it was opportunity driven. In other words, people seeing, okay, I'm done with this kind of career, I'm going to go do something that I really want to pursue. But in the last year or so, we're seeing more necessity entrepreneurs. In other words, people who've been laid off and now are in the process of starting businesses at an older age. So there's a whole sort of new group of entrepreneurs out there that are experienced and knowledgeable in a certain area, but maybe haven't had entrepreneurial experience before, and that can be a radical change.
What would be some markers for somebody who's just gone through a transition as to whether, hey, it's the right transition or the wrong transition?
I do think it comes back to those things we were talking about earlier, is that, you know, your measure of success is really more individual level. It has to do with your happiness, your legacy, your achievement, and your sense of accomplishment. And so if those things are working for you, and again, is that situation giving you an opportunity to grow on those areas? If it's not, and if the way you're spending your time, and I think that's really, for me, I mean, I was at Boston University for a number of years, and I loved my job there. I've moved to Babson and working harder, but I'm still pretty happy doing it. And so there's different kinds of satisfaction you get at different times. And so I really think that's the key thing. Do you get up in the morning and are you excited to go to work? And if the answer is yes, you're probably in the right place.
Well, we're almost out of time. Maybe I could just ask you a general question. Any lessons for planning a successful career? Just kind of a whatever.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people create unnecessary stress on themselves. I know, and again, I work with a lot of MBAs and undergraduate students, and they worry about, oh my gosh, somebody has an interview, I don't have an interview, what's wrong with me? And that kind of pressure can be a detriment to moving forward. And I think the same might be true if you happen to be unemployed or between jobs and some of those things, is that what you really need to do is to find those people that can help support you and help you move forward. You need emotional support if you're going through a transition. So find those people that you can work with, like the little group of people, the folks that were laid off and met every day to help look for jobs. That was a positive situation. So that's what you need to look for, is don't beat up on yourself too much. Chances are you're going to be unemployed. Chances are you're going to go move through 10 different jobs. There's going to be gaps in your unemployment, and that's okay. Think about what you can learn during that time.
That's great. I hope a lot of people hear that, because I think it's really important. I'd like to thank our guest, Candida Brush from Babson College, for Business Insight. Thanks for joining us.